Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to our latest episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be doing a couple different things here. One is going to be reviewing a mock draft that actually took place last night on X. Other users and I did a mock draft. It was really fun. It was live on X. And yeah, I had a really good time with that. Get to know a couple different guys that love their draft as much as I do. Very knowledgeable about the sport as well. So it was cool seeing what these other teams, fans were doing, these other teams, draft enthusiasts were doing to better their team as well. So, but before I dive into that, I just want to talk about a couple of things since the last time we have recorded. A few moves that have happened since the last podcast regarding the Vikings, and Cam Robinson landed to the Houston Texans on a 2-year deal, $12 million up to $14.5 million with incentives. And a big one for the Vikes is the signing of Rondale Moore. So Rondale Moore is a young receiver still. I think he's 25, 26 years old. He has a lot of talent. The one thing is that he's struggled to stay on the field and stay healthy during his whole career. He has definitely some strong upside still and some really nice skill. I think he'll be probably a shoo-in for wide receiver number 3, but we'll see what happens with him and Naylor as they will battle for that position. But I'm really excited about that. He can also go back and return punts and kickoffs as well. So Rondale Moore in this offense just provides J.J. McCarthy another weapon. And another thing to talk about too is, last time I talked about, Aaron Rodgers potentially being a guy that we're going after, or he had interest in us. Now, as time has passed on, I think that door has closed and the team is going to be moving forward with the plan with J.J. McCarthy. So I'm excited about that. And just based on the offseason we've had so far and the moves that we've made, we've definitely have been putting him into a good situation to come and start here. Probably one of the better situations that I've ever seen for a young quarterback to step into, especially, a second-year quarterback. So I'm really excited for that and to see what J.J. McCarthy can do for us. And also to see what we do at backup quarterback too. So that's another piece that we still are waiting on, which we should probably know here maybe after the draft, maybe a little before the draft. So, all right, well, moving on to our mock draft from last night. I'm just going to do a breakdown of it, run through the picks with you all. I like this mock a lot. I think a lot of these things can happen in the draft, especially at the top and throughout the draft. So, yeah, so let's get started. And, it's officially April, and the mock draft is or the NFL draft is among us here real soon. So we're really, really excited for this time and looking forward for the draft to be coming here on April 24th. So, all right, let's move into the mock. So with the number 1 pick, the Tennessee Titans drafted Cameron Ward. And this is something I agree with. I think Tennessee is going to go that route with Ward. They only have Will Mayo on their roster, who is not... he's just not the guy going forward. So I think you go up there with Tennessee. They like what they've seen with Cam Ward, and he's going to be their next quarterback there in Tennessee. He's also drawn comparisons to Steve McNair. Rest in peace, Steve McNair. But I think that's a good comparison for him, and it's kind of funny that, he actually played on the Titans. So, all right, the number 2 pick, the Cleveland Browns, they selected Abdul Carter, edge out of Penn State. So I think this is another pick that I agree with. One thing I do wonder if the Browns are going to go quarterback at some point. I thought maybe Shedeur could go here, but as the draft continues to approach, I think that Abdul Carter is going to be the pick. You're going to, put him on the other side of Myles Garrett, and that's going to be one heck of a tandem there on the edge for the Cleveland Browns. The number 3 pick was the New York Giants, and they took Travis Hunter to Colorado. So Travis Hunter, a lot of the talk was him potentially playing both positions at some capacity, which is I think he would. Initially, I thought more he's going to be going as a cornerback. Now we're kind of hearing that teams are more viewing him as that wide receiver. So, New York Giants teaming up with Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter. That'd be a nice 1-2 tandem there. Really, really strong 1-2 tandem too. So I can't fault them for that. So I do think will stick and play a cornerback at some capacity, and who knows, maybe he'll end up playing more corner than more wide receiver. But we will see that. Then the number 4 pick, the New England Patriots took Armand Membu, offense tackle to Missouri. Membu is just a stout offensive tackle. I have Will Campbell ahead of him, but you can't go wrong with this pick. I think they're really neck and neck if I had to, make a decision on that. So Membu went to the Patriots. Can't knock him for that. I think that's a great pick. Get protection for Drake May moving forward. At number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were on the clock, and they took Mason Graham, defensive tackle to Michigan. It's a glaring need for them in the defense. For Jacksonville, I thought maybe they could potentially go offensive line there. Maybe Will Campbell. Maybe they go a different route with a wide receiver. But with Brian Thomas Jr. last year in the draft, I think this is a good spot for them to get Mason Graham. And this is going to be the pick that I put in my final mock, is that they're going to add Mason Graham at D tackle. All right, so moving to the 6th pick, we have the Las Vegas Raiders on the clock. And the Las Vegas Raiders took Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. This is another one. I think it's going to be a lock. I think that the Raiders are going to take Jeanty they're going to draft Jeanty to have him in their backfield. So there are some talks now of Jalen Walker, linebacker, edge. He'll be out of Georgia, could potentially go there, that the Raiders like him, or potentially Mason Graham if he slides there to number 6. But I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be the pick on draft night. With the 7th pick, we have the New York Jets on the clock, and this was the first kind of surprise for me. I think that if this happened draft night, I could see it, as I've been seeing this happen a little more. I thought the Jets have some other glaring needs that they could go with. I thought maybe they would go offensive line here. I thought potentially they could go cornerback, could go wide receiver. Do they go quarterback? With Shedeur, try to get Shedeur in there with Justin Fields and see who wins that battle. But at the end of the day, they're gonna get a stout tight end, Tyler Warren out of Penn State. So I can't knock him for that pick at all. Tyler Warren's going to be a huge upgrade at their tight end position. And I think they have a special tight end going forward for many, many years. With the 8th pick, the Carolina Panthers were on the clock, and they took Jalen Walker, linebacker out of Georgia. So Jalen Walker, he's classified as a linebacker, but I think he's going to be better suited as an edge. I think he will play linebacker position in the middle in some portions, maybe like on first and second down, and they might slip him out to edge on passing downs. So yeah, I like that pick a lot. This is another spot here for Carolina that there are many possibilities with what direction they will do, but I think Jalen Walker would make sense for them, and I really like that pick for Carolina. Number 9, this is a pick that I was a little disappointed, or not disappointed with, but I was picking for the San Francisco 49ers. I was picking for the whole AFC West, the Vikings, and then the Chargers. Those were my picks. So I was really hoping that this guy was going to slide to me, but he didn't. And the Saints ended up going with offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU. So I like Campbell a lot. I think he could easily be there at number 4 for New England if they wanted him. And he wasn't he didn't make it to 11 in San Fran, which I was disappointed about, as we just talked about. But I think this pick is a nice pick for the Saints. Unfortunately, he has to go to Saints. Most people know how I feel about the Saints. But yeah, Will Campbell, nice pick. And I was pretty bummed out that he didn't fall to me to the San Francisco 49ers in this mock. So, all right, with the 10th pick, we had the Chicago Bears on the clock. And this was actually our first trade of the night. And we had the Pittsburgh Steelers moving up. So they acquired pick number 10 from the Chicago Bears, and Chicago received pick 21 from Pittsburgh, pick 83, and a first round pick in 2026. So good trade for the Steelers, and they moved up to draft Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. I think that's a very strong possibility for the Steelers to move up. I'm wondering like if the Bears slid on him that or not the Bears are gonna pass on Shedeur Sanders. But if the Bears did say they took a running back at this spot, maybe like Amarian Hampton, they didn't in this mock at this point. But I think that Shedeur could maybe even fall further down the list here, and maybe the Steelers could move up into maybe the mid 15, 16, 17 range to draft the quarterback. So I don't think teams in that range need a quarterback. So I think maybe the Steelers could have potentially waited to trade up and still land him. But yeah, this is definitely something I could see on draft night, them moving up to get Sanders at some point. With the 11th pick, San Francisco 49ers on the clock, and I had this pick, and I took Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. Will Johnson, if you go back to his sophomore season at Michigan when they won the national championship, tremendous tape. He was going to be a top 10 lock. And now a lot of people are kind of dogging him. There are a lot of people are down on him. He had a down year last year, had some injuries. And I think, Michigan just had a really tough year, and he kind of showed that he wasn't maybe all in with them. And it might have hurt his stock a little bit, but I still believe in Will Johnson as a cornerback. He's my number 2 corner in this draft behind Travis Hunter at number 1. But yeah, I think this would make sense. The San Francisco 49ers definitely need a cornerback. They are a little depleted in that area right now. And so I elected the talent of Will Johnson there in San Fran. With the 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys were on the clock, and this is another one that I've been mocking a lot in my mocks. And the Cowboys took Matthew Golden, wide receiver of Texas. Absolutely love this pick for them. I think that they need to help CD out. They could also potentially go running back at this position, maybe Amarian Hampton here at number 12. But I think either one of those positions, wide receiver or running back, they can't go wrong. And that will give them an upgrade for Dak in that offense. And also to help spell CD Lamb so he's not relied on so much as he has been the past couple of years. With the next pick on the clock, the Miami Dolphins were at 13. This one was the first kind of surprise for me. And they elected Ted McMillan, wide receiver at Arizona. I think Ted McMillan's a really, really nice wide receiver. I thought the position need here for the Miami Dolphins was a little off. I think they need more of offensive linemen. I thought they could potentially get Josh Simmons, who could potentially play offensive tackle or slide into guard. They could potentially be on Kelvin Banks Jr. at this point, who could also play offensive tackle and slide into guard. I thought they could have addressed that offensive line spot here. But hey, when the guy who made the pick gave his explanation of why he made that pick, he said, well, he would trade Tyreek Hill and have Ted there, and then you can utilize those picks that you acquired for Hill to go offensive line that drought or in a different direction. So I definitely understand the process there. I just think that I would have personally selected a different position at that point. Moving on to number 14, the Indianapolis Colts picked Jihad Campbell, a linebacker out of Alabama. I thought this was a really nice pick for the Colts. Just keep adding to that defense. I know the guy who was making this pick was hoping that Tyler Warren would have either fallen to them or Will Johnson would have fallen to them. But yeah, they got Jihad Campbell. He'll be a nice fit right there in the middle of that defense for the Colts. And I think they have a stud there in the second level going forward. Number 15th pick, we had the Atlanta Falcons, and they took edge rusher Mikael Williams out of Georgia. Just another player that, I could easily see this happen. Atlanta definitely needs edge. And I think keeping Williams there right in Georgia, he does not have to go far. Low cost moving fee there on that one. going from Athens to Atlanta. So I like that pick for the Falcons, and they took Mikael Williams, edge out of Georgia. With the 16th pick, I had this pick actually for the Arizona Cardinals, and I went Kelvin Banks, junior offense tackle out of Texas. I just thought that for my mock, I was thinking that they need to address their offensive line. They need to provide better protection for Kyler Murray going forward, and make him, help him have a clean pocket. He has to scramble a lot for his life usually. He's a pretty mobile quarterback, but that's just going to be costing him some wear and tear over the years. So Calvin Banks Jr., I really like him. I think you can play him at left tackle, maybe swing him over to right tackle. And also, I think that you can move him in to the inside and potentially play guard. So I think he'd actually probably be a better guard than tackle because he does have some limitations with his reach, which are some concerns on the outside, especially when a lot of those guys on the edge do have those more stout, more long statutes, and they have long wingspans that can kind of press him more. So that's a little concern there. So maybe he'd be suited or better suited to move on or move into the interior of the offensive line. With the 17th pick, the Cincinnati Bengals were on the clock, and they took Mike Green, edge out of Marshall. So this guy just has had tremendous production in his career at Marshall. Marshall is definitely a smaller school, less talent in that conference that they're in. So I think that we'll see what happens. I've been personally kind of putting Mike Green in the 20s, but he's definitely deserving a first-round pick, and I would not be shocked at all if he goes in the top 20 or even higher than this. So with the 18th pick, the Seattle Seahawks were on the clock, and I was picking this pick for them, and I took Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. So I took this pick for the Seahawks because I think Zabel is going to move into the interior of the offense line. I think he could potentially be a center for them. And as a Viking fan, and we saw how crucial and important it is to protect that interior of their offensive line and pocket for Sam Darnold, I think Zabel would be a really, really nice add for them and a crucial piece that they need to address here. Seahawks also have a couple picks in the second round, I think 50 and 52 potentially. I would not be shocked if they go offensive line at one of those spots as well. So I think fixing that or dressing the interior of that offense line is going to be smart for them, especially if they want to capitalize what they have out of Sam Darnold. With the 19th pick, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the clock, and they took Jahdae Barron out of Texas, cornerback. I like this pick a lot too. I think this is a good spot for him. He would fit nicely in that Tampa Bay defense, and Jahdae Barron going to be a Buccaneer. I think Tampa got tremendous value on this pick. We'll see if he goes a little higher than this, but I think this is a good range for him, between maybe 11 all the way to about 19. I could see him go. So this is a good spot. With the 20th pick, we had the Denver Broncos on the clock, and they took Marion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. So here's our second running back taken in the draft. Marion Hampton is definitely a workhorse type back. I think that he'll add a tremendous impact to Denver Broncos, and the Broncos got a good one. I know the Bears guy was pretty bummed out that he did not go to number 21. I know he probably would have took him at 10 if he didn't get that trade offer. But the Bears pick here at 21 is a really nice pick for them too. So, and with the 21st pick, the Bears took Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Josh Simmons, tremendous offensive line prospect. I think he'll potentially move into guard, or he can play at offense tackle. I like that position flexibility of playing inside or on the outside of the line. One thing he did have is later in the season, he had that ACL injury, so I don't know when he's going to be coming back or ready to start. I'm guessing he'll probably end up on the PUP list to start off the season, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, nice pick for the Bears. I definitely helped Caleb Williams in that situation. For the 22nd pick, we had the Los Angeles Chargers on the clock, and I took Kenneth Grant, defense tackle to Michigan. So this is a guy that, I would hope that he could maybe slide to us at 24, but in this mock he did not. And I just think it made sense. I was at this pick, I was thinking of Colston Loveland or Kenneth Grant, and I thought that the Chargers could potentially take like Mason Taylor in the second round or a couple other tight ends. And I thought Kenneth Grant would provide an impact for them on the interior of that defense line, and that's something that they really need to get better at. With the 23rd pick, we had the Green Bay Packers on the clock, and they took Derek Harmon, defense tackle in Oregon. Nice pick for them, unfortunately. I do wonder if the Packers would maybe think wide receiver. I just saw today they had Amika Buka there, a top 30 visit. That's a guy that I think they could add there. But, the Packers never take that wide receiver in round one. Who knows? Maybe this will be the year. But Derek Harmon, very nice pick for the Green Bay Packers, unfortunately. And with the 24th pick, we had the Minnesota Vikings on the clock, and I got a trade call from the Philadelphia Eagles. So my hope is that we do move back in this draft, especially to stick in the later first round and to acquire more draft capital. So we gave up number 24 to Philly and received number 32. Number 96 was a third round pick, and number 161 in this trade. So we traded back a few spots there, and we acquired 2 additional picks in this draft and 1 extra right at the third round, right before we pick at 97. And then so the Philadelphia Eagles, they traded up to take Walter Nolan, defense tackle of Ole Miss. Nice pick for them. It just seems like this is a Howie Roseman pick here. He always finds a way to finagle himself with these types of moves. So we'll see if the Eagles move up. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm hoping that the Vikes will move down. No, that's my hope. At least to move down into the later first round here. So, all right, with the 25th pick, we had the Houston Texans on the clock, and they took Tyler Booker, offensive guard out of Alabama. I think Booker is going to be a phenomenal guard in the NFL. He's a physical specimen, a freak. I think he's part of like the 2000 club for weightlifting at Alabama, which is crazy, crazy impressive. But yeah, they need to address their line. They need to provide more protection there for CJ Stroud. And I really like that pick for the Houston Texans. With the 26th pick, the LA Rams were on the clock. And I took this one too. And I went Colston Loveland, tight end for Michigan. So I stopped his slide and I took him for the other LA team, the Rams. And I like Colston Loveland a lot. I think he'd be a nice tight end there for the Rams, for Sean McVay's offense. And yeah, definitely a need for them to move forward with. Could they have gone cornerback in this position? Almost certainly. Could a cornerback be here at this position when the draft night actually comes? I think so. I think it's a strong possibility. I'm not going to rule it out. Maybe a guy like Savon Ravel or something. Maybe Maxwell Harrison could potentially be here at this spot. But, I couldn't let Colston Loveland fall anymore. He was one of the top players available on the board. So if I was Rams fans, I would be pretty excited to acquire his services. The next pick with the 27th pick, the Baltimore Ravens were on the clock, and they took Shamar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M. Shamar Stewart's a guy that has the tools, could be a potential really, really nice edge rusher in the NFL, but he just doesn't have the production yet. That's keyword is yet. He might. He hasn't shown it yet. I would personally not draft him because I watched a video where he kind of got manhandled by offense tackle and he kind of got pissed off and punched a guy in the nuts. So that's just something I don't really like. You gotta channel in that anger. You gotta try to hold that back. So I'm not a huge fan of Shamar Stewart, but hey, he could be a nice fit there for Baltimore. That's for sure. With the 28th pick, the Detroit Lions were on the clock, and they took James Pierce Jr. Man, if this happened, I would be a little bummed out, as Detroit got extremely better on the offense or on the defense line. I'm a lot higher than on James Pierce than most. I love his, I love how he's played in the SEC, big time football. He has production. One thing might be concerning his size. He might have to put on a little more weight at that position. But hey, if the Detroit Lions end up in the first round with him, I think they'd be incredibly happy, especially pairing him up with Aiden Hutchinson. That'd be a nice 1-2 combo moving forward for Detroit. So another thing I could see, they could definitely, I think maybe wide receiver, like Emeka Ibuka at this point is still on the board. Um, I was thinking too, Luther Burden, third is on this board still. I would not be shocked if they ended up going wide receiver at this spot to have Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mika Buka, Luther Burden the third. That'd be a nice 1-2-3 tandem there. So, but yeah, nice pick for the Lions here, and they ended up with James Pierce Jr. With the 29th pick, the Washington Commanders, they selected Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Very nice pick for them. I like Malachi Starks a lot. I think this is a good spot for him to potentially go. I think he might go higher than this myself, but we'll see what happens. In this mock, he fell a little bit, and the Washington Commanders getting a well-experienced safety for them out of Georgia. With the 30th pick, the Buffalo Bills were on the clock. This was another interesting one for me. I thought Buffalo at this position could go wide receiver, but they elected to go edge, and they took Donovan Izuruku out of Boston College. He has tremendous production in college. He's played in the ACC. It's not one of the top conferences, to say the least, but he has production. I know he has some nice traits, and I think this is a good spot for him later in the first round. Could go earlier if teams like him, but if I was making this pick, I think I would have took Emeka Ibuka at this point, since he was still on the clock for the Buffalo Bills, or Luther Burden since he was on the clock. But hey, I can't blame him for going edge. We saw how Philadelphia beat Kansas City. Now there's tremendous pressure on the edges and up in the interior of the defensive line. So can't blame them on this one at all. Another thing, I could see him go cornerback too at this spot. So, and with the 31st pick, so I had the Kansas City Chiefs. I was making their selection, and I got a trade call on this one, and the Cleveland Browns called me to make a trade. And so the Cleveland Browns traded up to number 31, and they received Kansas City moved back to the first pick in the second round, and then they picked up 104. So this is something that also came to my attention during the mock, is that the person who made this mock, he knew I was a Vikings pick, and he knew I had Kansas City. He said, which one would you give up? I told him, if we were doing a 2-round mock, I would honestly probably give you number 32 to move back one spot to 33, because I'm going to get the player I want still, and I would acquire another pick. So if this happened, I would not be shocked or not that I would be shocked. If I was going to move or have a bigger mock for this mock, or a longer mock for this mock, I would have made the pick. But since I wanted to make a pick for the Vikings, I stuck there at 32 and took my player coming up. But yeah, the Browns moved back up to the first round. They took Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. So nice pick for them. We'll see if Jackson Dart goes there. It's definitely a possibility. I think that they're going to go quarterback they're going to go quarterback potentially at that pick. Tyler Show could be another guy that could go there. And so we'll see what happens. So Jackson Dart was the pick for the Cleveland Browns at number 31. All right, so with my pick, it's the 32nd pick in the NFL draft. The Minnesota Vikings took Nick Manowari, safety out of South Carolina. I like this player a lot. I think he makes sense. He's not just a safety. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can line up in the box. He can line up on the edges. He has done this in college. He can line up in the slot. He can line up pretty much in any part of the secondary. Cover big tight ends. He's 6'3", 220 something, and ran in the 4.3s. So he has very, very nice athletic tools. I think he needs some more further development, as any player does. But Nick Manowari, don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name right, but it's close. He's a pick for the Vikings. I think it makes sense. And I would be extremely happy if this is how it happened on draft night. Another thing we got to think of too with him is B-Flow loves to show blitz and he loves to drop back guys in coverage. This is a perfect player for him, a perfect chess piece for him to move forward our defense. So that was the pick that I made for the Vikings. So, well, that was the first round mock that we did last night. I had a really fun time with it, meeting those other users on X, and yeah, the draft is upon us. It's coming here soon, and send me some thoughts. What you think about the Vikes pick there? Maybe look them up on YouTube if you want. Go back if you have games recorded for college like me. Go back and watch some games on him. I think you'd like him. So yeah, thank you for listening to the episode, and hey, we'll probably touch base here in a couple weeks. Maybe do one more mock sim before the draft comes up. Potentially a first round mock on here. We just gotta see. And be honest with you, I love doing the podcast. It's a lot of fun, but it is some work on my part with editing it and producing it. And I'm a busy guy. I work all day and I come home and help take care of my family, take care of my little girl. So, this is this is something I love to do, something that I'm passionate about, but it's also time consuming, and that's probably why I haven't been doing the podcast as much. So if you're wondering why that is the case, but yeah, thank you for continuing supporting the podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Let's go Vikes. Straight cash, homie. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.